My breath hitched, fogging the tiny peephole I'd frantically carved into the drywall. The cool air from inside the wall brushed my cheek, carrying the faint, sweet scent of something almost floral, yet cloying. Beyond the plaster, the smart home lights which I'd set to a vibrant party scene were blazing, not in my living room, not in my kitchen, but in the impossibly vast, hollow space between the studs. A cacophony of whispers and muffled thuds pulsed from the illuminated cavity, a horrifying symphony of revelry that wasn't mine. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate to escape. I pressed my ear closer, trying to discern individual voices, individual movements, when a sudden, blinding flash of light from deep within the wall flared, followed by a chilling, collective giggle that seemed to radiate from every fiber of my house. This wasn't a glitch, this was an invitation, and I was already inside. It all started the summer I finally got my dream smart home. I'd spent months planning the setup, poring over reviews, and meticulously wiring every last bulb and sensor. This wasn't just about convenience, it was about control, about creating a perfectly optimized living space. My new house, a charming but slightly dated bungalow on the outskirts of town, was the perfect canvas. I envisioned seamless transitions from morning coffee with soft amber light to vibrant evening gatherings bathed in a spectrum of colors. I even indulged in a top-of-the-line Philips Hue system, sinking a good chunk of my savings into the specialized bulbs and bridges. I'd tell myself it was an investment in my sanity, in making my life easier, more connected. The initial weeks were pure bliss. I loved barking commands at Google Assistant, watching the living room shift from a warm study glow to a cool, focused white for my late-night work. It felt like living in the future. The first hint of anything amiss was subtle, barely noticeable. One evening, as I was drifting off to sleep, I saw a faint, deep red glow emanating from under my bedroom door. I remember thinking, did I leave the living room lights on? But I was meticulous about my routines. My goodnight sequence always dimmed and then extinguished every light in the house except for a warm, low setting in the hallway for my dog, Buster, if he needed to get up. I got out of bed, slightly annoyed, but prepared to find a simple oversight. As I pushed open the door, the living room was dark, completely dark. Yet the red light was still there, a soft bleed from the crack under the opposite wall, the one separating my bedroom from the hallway. I checked the hallway, dark. Confused, I walked back into my bedroom, the red glow persisting just beneath the doorframe, a trick of the light, I told myself. I even knelt down, pressing my eye to the floor, trying to trace its source. Nothing, just the faint red, like a distant, smoldering ember. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. I chalked it up to sleep deprivation, or maybe a reflection from my neighbor's distant porch light, a harmless optical illusion. It wouldn't be the last time I'd try to rationalize the inexplicable. A few days later, it happened again, this time with a vibrant electric blue. I was in the kitchen, making dinner, music playing softly. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a flash, like a camera taking a picture, but longer, a sustained pulse of bright blue. It came from the dining room, empty and dark, just beyond the archway. I paused, knife in hand, listening. Nothing, just the hum of the refrigerator. I walked into the dining room, peering into the shadowy corners. Everything was as it should be. I even checked the Hue app on my phone. All lights off, as scheduled. A glitch, I decided. A momentary hiccup in the sophisticated digital brain that ran my home. After all, technology wasn't perfect. I'd installed everything myself. Maybe I'd missed a connection, or there was some obscure firmware bug. The thought barely registered as a concern. It was more a mental note to check the wiring diagram again. But those small, isolated incidents started to accumulate, slowly chipping away at my sense of security, sowing the first seeds of the profound anxiety that would soon consume me. The smart home, I was beginning to realize, had a mind of its own, and it wasn't always aligning with mine. The real shift began on a Tuesday night. I was engrossed in a documentary, Buster asleep at my feet. Suddenly, the kitchen lights, which were off, flickered to life. A soft, warm yellow. I glanced over, thinking maybe I'd accidentally triggered a scene with a voice command I hadn't realized. "Google, turn off kitchen lights," I said, a little louder than necessary. Nothing. The yellow glow persisted. I tried again. "Hey Google, kitchen off." Still nothing. I pulled out my phone, opening the Hue app. The kitchen light icon showed it was off. I tapped it once, turning it on, then off again. The physical light in the kitchen didn't react. It stayed on. This was more than a glitch. This was the system not responding, not even acknowledging my commands, yet actively displaying a light setting. A cold knot began to form in my stomach. I walked into the kitchen, the yellow light feeling less inviting and more defiant. I stood there for a moment, looking at the ceiling fixture, feeling a weird sense of unease. It wasn't just a bulb. It was a part of my carefully constructed, highly controlled environment that was now operating entirely outside my control. I pulled the circuit breaker for the kitchen. The light immediately dramatically died. I switched it back on. The light blinked, then came back on, still that same soft yellow. I spent the next hour troubleshooting. I restarted the Hue bridge, checked my Wi-Fi, even did a factory reset on the specific bulb. Nothing worked. The kitchen light remained stuck on that soft yellow, unperturbed by my commands, both digital and physical. I finally just pulled the bulb out, defeated, and went to bed. Buster seemed to sense my frustration, nudging my hand sympathetically. The following morning, the phantom lights escalated. I woke up to my living room awash in a pulsing purple and green, like a strobe light at a rave. My alarm hadn't even gone off. I stumbled out of bed, heart already pounding, and into the living room. The party scene, one I'd ironically named Rave Cave, but never actually used, was playing out in all its psychedelic glory. This wasn't a dim red or a flashing blue. This was a full-blown assault on my senses. And again, my phone showed all lights off. "Google, turn off living room lights," I practically yelled. The system replied, "The living room lights are already off." The hair on my arm stood on end. My smart home was lying to me, or at least the interface was. The system was responding as if the lights weren't on, even as they pulsed maniacally around me. I tried to calm myself, telling myself it was a deep system error, a corrupted file somewhere. But the persistent, almost playful nature of it felt malicious. I pulled the main circuit breaker for the entire house. The lights immediately went out. Silence, darkness, and for a brief moment calm. I took a deep breath, thinking I'd finally solved it. I flipped the breaker back on. As the power surged through the house, every single light bulb, every single Hue fixture flashed on simultaneously. Not just the living room, but the kitchen, the bedroom, the hallway, even the garage. And they were all pulsing with that same violent purple and green. The entire house was bathed in this unnatural, sickening glow. It wasn't a glitch. It was a performance, and I was the sole, terrified audience. This was the first time I truly felt like I wasn't alone. Panic was a cold, constricting hand around my throat. I stood frozen in the hallway, surrounded by the pulsating, sickly colored light that mocked my control. Buster, usually unflappable, was whimpering softly at my heels, his tail tucked low. Even he knew something was deeply, terribly wrong. The logical part of my brain screamed, "Unplug the Hue bridge." I raced to the living room, tearing cables from the router, yanking the power cord from the small, white hub that was the brain of my smart home. The lights, to my horror, didn't falter. They continued their relentless, hypnotic pulse of purple and green. It was as if the Hue bridge, now dark and inert on the floor, had been merely a suggestion, a formality. The lights themselves had become untethered, maintaining their own terrifying agenda. I spent the next few hours in a desperate, futile attempt to regain control. I tried unscrewing bulbs, but they were high up in the vaulted ceilings, and I didn't have a tall enough ladder. I tried every voice command, every app setting, every troubleshooting guide I could find online. Nothing. The entire house vibrated with this bizarre, unsettling light show. It was like living inside a giant, malfunctioning rave toy. But the atmosphere wasn't festive. It was suffocating. I started to notice other things. The subtle hum that usually accompanied the smart home's various devices seemed to amplify, a low thrumming that resonated not just from the speakers, but from the very walls themselves. It was a physical sensation, vibrating through the floorboards up my legs. That afternoon, exhausted and frayed, I noticed something new. The pulsing lights weren't just emanating from the fixtures. I saw flashes from behind the walls. Tiny slivers of light, like miniature lightning strikes, would briefly illuminate the thin cracks in the plaster near the baseboard, then vanish. I'd seen a crack or two before, just normal house settling, but now they seemed to be actively breathing, expanding and contracting with the rhythm of the internal lights. I knelt down, pressing my ear against one particularly active spot near the kitchen. A faint, muffled sound reached me. It wasn't the hum. It was something else, a whisper perhaps, or a distant giggle. The blood drained from my face. My initial thought was pipes, maybe an old, complicated plumbing issue, but the sounds weren't mechanical. They were organic, human even. The next night confirmed my worst fears. I couldn't sleep with the house pulsating like a dying heart, so I retreated to my car, Buster curled up beside me, shivering. From the driveway, I watched my house. Every window glowed with that sickly purple and green. The glow was steady within the glass, but every so often, a brighter, more concentrated burst of light would erupt from inside the walls, visible through the sheathing, a brief, intense flash of red or blue before receding back into the purple-green ocean. It was like watching fireworks explode inside the very structure of my home, a grotesque, internal celebration. My smart home wasn't just having a party, it was having a party behind my walls, and it was using my own lighting system to do it. The fear archives housed in my mind began to replay every ghost story, every urban legend I'd ever scoffed at. Was this some kind of infestation? Not of rats, but of something else. Something that had learned to manipulate my home's technology. The idea was ludicrous, yet it was the only explanation that fit the terrifying facts. I called an electrician first thing in the morning. He arrived, a burly man named Frank, with a skeptical look that slowly transitioned to bewildered confusion as he witnessed the house's psychedelic state. He tried tracing circuits, testing voltages, but every reading came back normal, despite the lights blazing in defiance of his tools. He even brought out specialized equipment to scan for unusual M fields. Nothing. Look, buddy, he finally said, scratching his head. I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never seen anything like it. It's like the bulbs are just running on their own, completely disconnected from the power grid. He offered to cut the power to the entire house from the street, but that would mean living in complete darkness, without electricity, indefinitely. I politely declined, feeling a fresh wave of despair. We're about to go deeper into this, and the story only gets darker from here. If you're enjoying this account and want to support the channel, take a quick moment to like the video and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now let's get back to it. Over the next few days, the sounds from inside the walls became clearer, more distinct. Whispers, yes, but also a light, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against plaster. Sometimes I would hear what sounded like an impossibly faint, high-pitched music, distant and tinny, but unmistakably there beneath the hum of the house. I remember one afternoon, I was trying to cook, knife once again in hand, when a clear, childish giggle erupted from the wall right beside my ear. I dropped the knife with a clatter, my blood running cold. It wasn't just a general cacophony anymore. It was specific, directed, like they knew exactly where I was and they were playing with me. I started talking to myself, trying to rationalize it. It's old pipes, it's the wind, it's just my imagination playing tricks. But I knew it wasn't. One night the lights shifted. Instead of the chaotic purple-green, they settled into a soft, steady amber glow, reminiscent of a cozy dinner party. My Hue app, still stubbornly showing all lights off, suddenly displayed a notification. New scene activated. Warm welcome. I hadn't created that scene. I certainly hadn't activated it. The implication was horrifying. Something else was using my smart home system, creating scenes, controlling the ambience. And then the smell. A faint, almost imperceptible scent at first, like old potpourri, but quickly growing stronger, becoming sickly sweet, cloying. It was the same scent I'd smelled from under the door that first night. It permeated the air, thick and oppressive, making it hard to breathe. It was coming from the walls. I ran a hand across the drywall, feeling a strange, latent warmth emanating from within. The walls were heating up subtly, as if radiating from a hidden source. My smart home, specifically the fear archives of my imagination, was now actively hosting something unseen, something deeply unsettling, and it was inviting me in. The sweet, cloying smell became unbearable, a thick, suffocating blanket that draped itself over every surface of my existence. It clung to my clothes, permeated the air, and even seemed to seep into my skin. The warmth emanating from the walls intensified, making the entire house feel like a living, breathing oven. I could no longer deny what was happening. My smart home wasn't just malfunctioning. It was being actively manipulated, transformed into a stage for something utterly alien. My house, once my sanctuary, was now a trap, its walls alive with an unseen, unheard party. I tried calling a paranormal investigator, a local contact I found online, but after describing the smart home lights, the smells, and the sounds, he politely but firmly declined, suggesting I seek psychological help instead. His dismissal only solidified my isolation. Nobody would believe me. Nobody could believe me. This wasn't a classic haunting. It was a grotesque digital possession, a modern horror. I was on my own. I spent a sleepless night, huddled with Buster in the living room, the amber glow from the walls making everything appear ancient and decayed. The whispers were louder now, almost distinct. I could almost make out words, fragments of conversations, but they were always just beyond my grasp, like trying to remember a dream upon waking. The decision crystallized at dawn. I couldn't live like this. I had to know. I had to confront whatever was behind my walls, whatever was using my smart home to throw its bizarre, terrifying celebration. I grabbed the heaviest hammer I owned, a small flashlight, and a utility knife. Buster whined, sensing my intent, but I gently pushed him into the backyard, securing the doggy door. I didn't want him witnessing whatever I was about to uncover. I stood in the hallway, facing the wall where the childish giggle had been loudest, where the warmth from inside my walls was most palpable. My hand trembled, but a strange resolve had settled over me. There was no going back. I started with the utility knife, carving a small, rectangular opening just big enough for my eye, near the floor. The gypsum board parted with a soft tear, revealing not just empty space, but a faint, swirling mist inside. It wasn't smoke nor fog. It moved with an ethereal, luminous quality, reflecting the amber light from within. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate to escape. I widened the hole, making it large enough to shine my flashlight inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. It wasn't a void. It was an impossibly vast, expansive space, far larger than the dimensions of my house could possibly allow. The smart home lights I had installed, the vibrant reds, blues, greens, now intermingled with the prevailing amber, were indeed burning, but suspended in midair, floating free, casting their kaleidoscope glow on something that moved. They weren't wires, not pipes. These were structures, elaborate, ephemeral structures that seemed to be made of light itself, shifting and swaying as if in a gentle breeze. And amongst them, outlines, countless outlines. My smart home lights were illuminating silhouettes, wisps of movement, like figures dancing just beyond full visibility. Figures that were not quite solid, not quite shadow. They were there, dancing, mingling, their movements fluid and unnatural. This was the party. This was the celebration happening inside my walls. The whispers surged now, no longer muffled, but clear enough for me to perceive a maddening chorus of voices, layered over each other, speaking in a language I couldn't comprehend. Yet the tone was undeniably jubilant, festive. My flashlight beam cut through the swirling light, revealing more details. The floor of this impossible space was littered with what looked like discarded party favors, but made of sheer light, shimmering and dissolving. Confetti of pure energy, streamers of luminescence. And then I saw it. A single distinct silhouette, larger than the others, paused in its dance. It turned slowly, as if sensing my gaze. It had no discernible features, just a darker void within the swirling light, but I felt its eyes on me. A profound, unsettling stillness fell over the impossibly vast space within the wall. The dancing stopped. The whispers ceased. All that remained was the amber glow and the sickeningly sweet scent. Then, the lights within the wall, my smart home lights, began to change. They pulsed faster and faster, shifting from playful amber to an angry, violent red. The warmth from the wall intensified, becoming a scorching heat. The silence within the cavity was broken by a single, resonant thrum, deep and vibrating, that shook the entire house. The silhouette, the one that had turned to face me, began to coalesce, to solidify at its edges, losing its ethereal quality. It was approaching the opening I had made, growing larger, clearer. Panic surged, a tidal wave sweeping away all my carefully built resolve. This wasn't merely a party. It was an active, malevolent entity, and I had intruded. I slammed the hammer against the drywall, not to make a bigger hole, but to make noise, to break the spell, to scare it away. The sound was deafening in the sudden stillness. The red lights flared, blinding me for a split second. When my vision cleared, the opening I had made in the wall was no longer a rectangle. It was an irregular, jagged tear, as if the wall itself had been ripped open from the inside. And through that gaping maw, the sweet scent was overwhelming, a tidal wave of sickly perfume that made my eyes water. The silhouette was closer, its form now distinct, though still undefined. It was tall, impossibly slender, and it reached out a shimmering, translucent hand towards the opening. It was beckoning, not inviting, demanding. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet, scrambling away from the wall. The entire house groaned around me, a sound I now recognized as the very fabric of my home protesting, groaning under the strain of being twisted into something it was never meant to be. The lights in the living room, in my actual living room, no longer amber, now blazed a triumphant, burning red. The Hue app on my phone, still showing all lights off, suddenly displayed a new notification, one that sent a shiver of absolute terror down my spine. Host detected. Welcome to the Fear Archives. It wasn't my smart home. It was their smart home. It always had been. I never had the control I thought I did. The walls of my house were no longer just walls. They were a membrane, a thin veil separating me from an impossible, terrifying reality. I fled, burst out the front door, leaving the house to its monstrous, uninvited guests. I haven't been back. The lights within my walls still burn, I know it. They're still partying in there, probably forever. And every night, I swear, I can still smell that cloying, sweet scent on the wind. The air is never quite clean anymore. That cloying sweet scent, that phantom perfume from inside my walls, it never truly leaves me. It lingers in the back of my throat, a constant reminder of what I saw, what I felt, what I almost touched. I live in a small apartment now, as far from that house as I could get, but the quiet of these new walls is a different kind of oppressive. Every creak, every groan of the old building sends a jolt of panic through me. I check the lights constantly, flicking switches on and off just to prove to myself that I am in control, that I am the one deciding when they burn and when they die. But the paranoia is a thick, ugly scar on my psyche. I still have nightmares, vivid and chilling. Dreams of those impossibly vast spaces within the drywall, of the dancing silhouettes of that single, towering figure reaching out for me. Sometimes I wake up convinced I can hear the faint, muffled sounds of their ceaseless revelry, the whisper of their impossible language, the high-pitched, tinny music seeping through the plaster. I know it's just the wind, just the hum of the city, but the fear is real, living and breathing within me. I see smart homes on television now, in advertisements, and my blood runs cold. The convenience, the control, the seamless integration, it all feels like a dangerous invitation, a gateway to something ancient and hungry, hidden just beyond our perception, waiting for us to hand over the keys. They're still in there, I'm sure of it, dancing in the endless, light-filled chambers of my old house, their party never-ending, fueled by the very technology I so eagerly installed. The lights still burn. I wonder who they're illuminating now. If you've ever felt like your home wasn't quite yours, like something else was sharing your space, I'd be morbidly interested to hear your experiences in the comments below. Be careful what you let into your home. Some doors once opened can never truly be closed. Sweet nightmares.